prisoners thrown from helicopters.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've never seen them thrown out of my airplane because it's behind me, but we had a couple of guys from Philadelphia in our squadron who used to blindfold the guys with safety wire and pull them real tight, so this copper wire is tearing into their eyes and nose, and bind their hands with safety wire. And used to have contests seeing how far they could throw the bound bodies out of the airplane. And, you know, throw one as far as you can and see if you can get the other one farther.
If you could approximate how many instances have you come across this?
Of that, in the two-digit numbers, say, somewhere between 15 and 50, probably. If they're alive, they're VCS, automatically. If they're dead, then they're confirmed VC.
On Operation Stone, we were sitting up on a railroad trestle, and then there was a river on each side, and there was another company behind each river. And like the people were running around inside, and we were just shooting them. And like the newspaper said, Operation Stone, like World War II movie, you know. And we just sat up there and we wiped them out, women, children, everything. 291 of them.
We were about 5 miles down the road, where there were some Vietnamese children at the gateway of the village, and they gave the old finger gesture at us. It was understandable that they picked us up from the GIs there. They stopped the truck. They didn't stop the truck. They slowed down a little bit, and it was just like response. The guys got up, including the lieutenants, and just blew all the kids away. There was about 5 or 6 kids blown away there, and then the truck just moved, continued down the hill. That was my first day in Vietnam. In Quang Tri City, I had a friend who was he was working with USAID, and one time he asked me would I like to accompany him to watch. He was an advisor with an ARVN group, and he asked me if I would like to accompany him into a village that I was familiar with to see how they act. So I went with them, and they didn't find any enemy, but they found a woman with bandages. So she was questioned by 6 ARVNs, and the way they questioned her was since she had bandages, they shot her. She was hit about 20 times. So after she was questioned, of course dead, this guy come over who was, and knowing him, he was a former major. He was in the service for 20 years, and he got hungry again and came back over working with USAID, AIDS International Development. And he went over there and ripped her clothes off and took a knife and cut from her vagina all the way up, well, just about up to her breast, and pulled her organs out, completely out of her cavity, and threw them out. And then he stopped and knelt over and commenced to peel every bit of skin off her body and left her there as a sign for something or other.
In one village, we wounded women and kids going into the village, and when we got in there, this was in Tuiwa also, when we got in the village, me and another guy, we were treating 2 unconscious babies, not babies, but like 5, 6-year-old kids, and a woman lying in a hammock. And I told the lieutenant these people have to be evacuated, because if they're not evacuated, this lady had shrapnel on her, and the kids had shrapnel on them, and they were unconscious. I said, if they're not evacuated, they're going to die. He said, well, forget it, Doc. We don't have time to stay here and wait. And we went up on the hill, right above this same village, and we fired down on this village the next day while people were trying to bury their dead. We fired down on the village at the people while they were doing their burial ceremony, and they killed another VC, well, not VC, but another person in the village. Also, we went down that same day to get some water, and there were 2 little boys playing on a dike, and one sergeant just took his M16 and shot one boy up the dike. The other boy tried to run, and he was almost out of sight. This other guy, Spec 4, he shot this other little boy up the dike, and the little boy was like lying on the ground kicking, so he shot him again to make sure he's dead. Then we went into the village, and this Papa San there, I don't know if he was a village chief or who he was, but he came up to us, and he was telling us that he was making motions. A bird, was flying over, and the bird took a shit, and the thing went boom, boom, and he was saying this is how like a lot of people in the village got hurt.
I think every person that was in Vietnam was in the infantry used CS, which is a gas, chemicals, Willie Peter, that's white phosphorus, and we use these sometimes to clear bunkers, and other times to destroy a hooch before we'd go into a village or something. If we thought it might be VC infested or something like this, we'd send in Willie Peter mortars, 60 millimeters, and this would burn up the hooches that explode, throwing white phosphorus on different hooches in the village, start the hooches burning, and also kill people. It's probably one of the worst sights I've ever seen is a person that's been burned by Willie Peter, because it doesn't stop. It just burns all completely through your body. The only way you can end this burning is to cut off the air. It's very difficult.
You have some testimony here on the burning of villages, cutting off of ears, cutting off of heads, calling artillery on villages for games, women raped, napalm on villages. Could you go into just a few of these to let the people know how you treat the Vietnamese civilians?
The calling in of artillery for games, the way it was worked would be the mortar forward observers would call in, or we'd pick out certain houses in villages, friendly villages, and the mortar forward observers would call in mortars until they destroyed that house, and then the artillery forward observer would call in artillery until he destroyed another house, and whoever used the least amount of artillery, they won. And then when we got back, someone would have to buy someone else beers. And I saw one case where there were two prisoners, and one prisoner was staked out on the ground, and he was cut open while he was alive, and part of his insides were cut out, and they told the other prisoner if he didn't tell them what they wanted to know, that they would kill him. And I don't know what he said because he spoke in Vietnamese, but then they killed him after that anyway.
All right, were these primarily civilians, or do you believe that they were, or do you know that they were actual
the way that we
NVA?
distinguish between civilians and VC, VC had weapons and